If you come out here with this crap right here and expect to survive the night, good luck. Hey guys, T2 out here. Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to the video. This is part 2 of the super shelter build in the Walmart budget build. I slept perfect. I slept without complaints. I stayed warm all night. It was an awesome trip. It was an awesome adventure. Don't mind this. This is my 0-degree top quilt that I had to pull out, but don't. Plastic, Mylar, that's all you need. You do not need a 0-degree top quilt when it's 10 degrees outside. Plastic Mylar, keep you warm all night long. People on the internet know what they're talking about. Current real feel, current temperature is 30 degrees, so it's pretty freaking cold. Trying to think in cold right now, kind of hard to do. Thoughts, opinions on this super shelter. It sucks. If you have the fire going, you stay warm. Okay, pretty basic, right? If I put a stick on the fire, that stick is going to burn well for about 20 minutes. And then it's going to stop, or it's going to become ember. It's going to become ash. Then you don't feel the heat. When it's burning well, you are toasty and warm. But then when it starts burning out, can't even feel it. What I did last night is I went to bed a little after 2 o'clock. I stoked up the fire before I laid down, and it got pretty decent, pretty warm. About 20 minutes later, no fire. You can't feel the heat. You can see the red embers, but that's about it. So I got back up, which was a pain in the butt. I had more firewood. I stoked up the fire some more, scooted it a little bit closer, added a couple more pieces, because my thought was I'm not going to continue to get up every 20-30 minutes to add a stick to the fire. So I front loaded it. I put every log stick that I could find on the fire, and then about 20 minutes later it burned out. Like, unless you have somebody constantly loading up the fire, you're gonna have to get out every 20-30 minutes and add more wood. Another thing is that the fire looks a lot bigger than what it is, and it is sketchy. One of the rules in fire safety is A, pay attention to the fire, and B, pay attention to your surroundings. And yet this type of shelter method is taught: set the fire, go to sleep, deal with it later. Not the best idea, not the best shelter. Was it dry on the inside? Yes, plastic sheeting stays dry for the most part. Now, had it been a heavy rain, a downpour, probably not. The Mylar blanket, did it work when the fire was stoked up? Yes, it would reflect some of that heat back down onto me. There's nothing to retain that heat. And so if I'm going to build a fire anyway, I might as well just sit in front of the fire. There's no point in building a fire and then taking 10 steps back from it and trying to lay on the ground. Build the fire, sit beside the fire. I think I'm going to do an entire video kind of discussing the super shelter, thoughts, opinions, being someone that's actually slept in it. Because most YouTube channels, they don't sleep in it. They'll set it up and they'll say, this works. And it does. Again, it works when you have the fire, but having slept in it all night, it's a complete different ballgame. Yeah, so we'll be back down to film here shortly when it warms up. I got to go get the other guys there up at the house. So, yeah, I'm going to go get warm and get some coffee. Pros, cons of the quote-unquote super shelter.
A big con is just the setup. I will say with practice you could probably get better. If you are in a hurry, it's going to be a struggle to get it popped up quick. If it's right before sundown or something, you try to beat the sun to collect firewood.
Yeah, so it took us almost probably 2 hours to set up, maybe at least an hour and a half. We were down here messing around with it. It was pretty windy out yesterday. I'd have like the Mylar over the paracord, and then the wind would knock it down. I'd have the plastic over the paracord, and the wind would knock it all down. Things that we didn't know we needed until we needed them. You can duct tape the Mylar back onto itself, and that would have held it around the cordage that we had. Tent stakes would have been nice. Practicing this at least once, maybe twice before we get out here and we try to do it, probably would have helped, but that's what learning's for, and that's why we do this channel. Did the super shelter work when you were in it?
We took a video of me getting yours last night with some fire. It felt nice. It wasn't like terrible, so it will get you through the night, and it will, it'll help. It's better than nothing. As far as if it's ideal, I personally don't think it's the best thing in the world. But if you are just on a budget, if all you got to spend is $50, $75, whatever it is, and you want to build a full kit to last you, a whole day and a whole night, this is probably the best you're going to get.
It is waterproof. I was dry underneath it. It did stay warm while you had the fire going. If you're having to get out every 20 minutes and put wood on the fire, it kind of defeats the whole purpose. Would you build this shelter again, or would you take a different approach to have a waterproof shelter with fire?
If we're still on a budget, there are some things I think we could do to make this super shelter a little bit better and still be right at our budget. But I do still feel like there are some other options out there that I think would work better.
For me, if I'm going to have to build a fire and I'm going to have to tend to the fire, why not just sit around the fire? Build a reflector wall with 2 sticks, put the mylar blanket on the 2 sticks. You could do like a little A-frame or a little like lean-to with the plastic to have the waterproofness. If you have a draft in this thing, you're going to know it. So the bottom end where it lays on the ground, the triangle lays on the ground, I could not get that sealed up no matter how much I tried. Top of my head, that was not sealed up. The feet were wrapped around a tree. That stayed pretty sealed all night, but the top of my head was open and exposed.
So setting up, I took a different approach. And I could have been doing it completely wrong. As I mentioned, I've never actually built the shelter before yesterday. I made mine one solid piece. Basically double layered the bottom that came out and went to a triangle. In my mind, I was looking at more trying to add that extra layer between me and the ground to make sure I don't get wet, to do this, to do that. That I feel like I could have done better. I feel like your approach might have worked better for me, as well as I put mine too high up. And putting it up higher, I felt like would kind of widen my space out a bit, as well as I felt like if this worked the way it's supposed to, this whole greenhouse effect, to have a bigger shelter would essentially just kind of catch more heat and hold more heat. But I couldn't even get my mylar blankets to stay up. So granted, those other items, if we would have had them, I feel like I probably could have got away with it. But that wind was pretty bad when we were trying to set up yesterday.
I ended up cutting mine, my sheeting, and I thought I almost cut it too short because I was still trying to do a layer on bottom and then wrap the top in one consecutive piece. Had some left over, so I used that as the base and then just did an A-frame shelter with the 2 pieces. Hindsight, had we set out here and tried it a couple dozen times and measured right and did X, Y, and Z, yeah, as a makeshift shelter for a person that don't know what they're doing, maybe watch 1 or 2 YouTube videos, is this ideal?
If you're on a budget, maybe. If you're not, then no. This is 100 times harder to set up properly than a tent or a hammock. The greenhouse effect, from what I experienced when I was in yours, wasn't really what I expected it to be. It was really more just heat from the fire. You're gonna get that same effect. You're gonna still be warm by just being next to the fire.
So you had a $50 budget. You stayed $4 shy of that. With additional budget, what items would you pick up first? Let's say an extra 50 to 100 bucks.
One thing I'm getting is a hatchet or some type of little saw, hand saw of some kind, because the wood you were stuck with last night, it's all dead branches basically that was soaked in water. If we had a hatchet, we could actually, or some type of saw, we could have cut down some of these fallen trees, as he mentioned. No real way to cut it. I mean, we knew that we could make a fire with what we had, but everything was soaking wet. Nothing was big. If you did find a bigger log, it was so, dry rotted and dead that, I mean, it probably wouldn't even burned. A hatchet would have been really nice to have. I think that's my number one. What would be yours?
A tent or a shovel would be mine. And the reason for that, so what I could have done is built up a massive fire, let it burn out, get down to the ash pit, and then put about 6 inches of dirt, maybe 4 inches of dirt on top of it, and lay down on top of the ashes. That would have been option A. With even the Mylar reflecting the heat back down to me like a little A-frame shelter, that would have been option A, because I'm already taking the time to build the fire, to do all the tending fire, finding, collecting the wood, doing all this and that and the other, and I'm letting the fire burn outside of my shelter. At least if I buried it, I would maintain that heat. Number two is a tent and hot rocks. Find rocks that aren't in the river, heat those rocks up, and then bury them again 4 to 6 inches below your tent, your setup, and then you basically got the same thing, just using rocks.
I think if my budget was still higher after the hatchet, I'd say a sleep system. And here's why. Your heat, your warmth would have been solely reliant on that fire, which is fine, like, because that's what it's there for. But if it starts raining, that fire's gone.
Yep.
Fire's going to be gone. You're going to be freezing cold. You might stay dry. Hopefully, ideally, you would stay dry. But heat's gone. You're going to freeze. It's going to be miserable. And your sole reliant for heat is that fire.
I agree with him. Like I mentioned earlier, just carry the freaking gear. Like, I know a lot of people are out here, oh, I want to bushcraft. But they're not bushcrafting this weather. Very few and far between. And in some sort of terrible situation, your car breaks down, you run out of gas, you have to walk home due to a power outage. That's not an end of the world apocalypse, but it can still be life or death. If you come out here with this crap right here and expect to survive the night, good luck. If this was life or death, basically I'd be up tending the fire all night. I'd be using that flashlight I had, and I would be running around the woods in the middle of the night collecting firewood. That's the only way I would be able to stay warm and stay alive. Any other pros and cons? How'd you like the budget? How do you feel about the gear? I stole your beanie weenies, by the way.
It wasn't terrible. Of course, the bag was really small, but it did fit everything. And I feel like if you're running like a get-home bag, it would probably work. I think it would actually work pretty decent. You have enough room for food. The only struggle would be you have to carry water. You have to carry in your hand your water source, because you're not fitting that gallon in there. And even like your bag, where you could fit that gallon in there, one squish and the top comes off and you lose your water.
Yep.
The off-brand stuff seemed to work. We were able to get fire going in this wet, moist wood. We stayed under budget, which was my main goal, to show that you can have a budget and still, get lower end stuff, lower quality stuff, and make it work. It's just not always perfect.
If you're going to be on a budget, you're going to have to know some bushcrafting skills. I think everything else besides the shelter was fine. Flashlight worked well. The knife worked well. Your headlamp was fine. Food, yeah, it's heavy, but for people on a budget, it's fine. Next upgrade would probably be a water filter, because once we got done with that 1 gallon of water, you need some way to filter it to get clean drinking water.
Well, we had the cans
we could have boiled.
So potentially there's stuff there, but it's not something I would want to rely on solely.
Right. You could have boiled the water and made it clean, safe to drink. But if you're on a get-home situation, you're boiling 10 to 12 ounces at a time, letting it cool down, then pouring into the gallon jug. It's going to take all day to fill up that gallon jug. That's going to be an all-day process. Water filter, purification tablets, both were out of budget, or at least your budget. That'd be one thing I'd pick up. Like I said, a good sleep system. There's a reason we're one of the only channels out here actually testing crap like this right here. We put our money where our mouths are, and y'all say, hey, this works well. So does the whole YouTube community. We're out here to test it, and we're out here to say that it sucks, because it does. Just like most emergency blankets and most emergency sleeping bags, they're emergency for a reason.
Real quick, I actually want to add something. For a lot of you bushcraft guys, like, I respect that. I do. I don't personally want or think that I could come out in these woods and survive an extended amount of time with no gear, whatever. I will say this for those that's like, I don't need gear because I don't, this, that, and the other. I mean, you also don't need a car to drive 50 or to go 50 miles, but you probably got one. Like, to have that gear, I'm not saying you got to have a full tent, full shelter, all that stuff, but like, to have essential items that could make your life a million times easier. It's not a bad thing to have, and no one's going to look down on you. All you're going to look like is you're prepared.
And I get it. Bushcraft is not prepping. Survival is not prepping. Whole different ball game. Whole different video. to go out here and think, okay, I'm on a get home or a bug out situation, I'll just build my shelter every night. Good luck. It took us 2 hours to put plastic tarp up, let alone out here cutting trees and building an actual wooden frame structure. Fun little trip, fun little challenge. That's all we got. Check out some other videos up here in the corner. That's all we got. B2 out.